This is it. This is the church. The English word church is not in the scriptures. Church is a mistranslation of the Greek word ekklesia, and ekklesia does not in any way refer to church. The English word church is from the Greek word kirke, spelled K-I-R-K-E. That Greek word is transliterated in the English word circe, spelled C-I-R-C-E. And circe, that is a Greek goddess, the daughter of the sun god, and the sun god is Satan. You see, Circe was a goddess of sorcery, and she was skilled in the magic of transmutation, illusion, and necromancy. One of the elements of Circe is the chalice. Circe always had a chalice in her hand, mixed with potion. Sometimes it had blood in it, because she was a sorceress. It is said that Circe was able to, by her chalice full of blood and drugs, incantations, she was able to change humans into wolves, lions, and swine. And this is important. This is mythology, but yet it has a form of truth. And this truth is something we see today in many churches. Circe has the ability to transform through her incantation, her magic of transmutation. She can transform human beings into animals. Wolves, lions, swines, and the like. Now we see this in church today. We see the behavior of the people, the adherents, the congregation. Their behavior is changed from sanity to insane behavior. Many churches have the congregation crawling on the floor, barking like dogs, running around in the assembly, in the congregation, screaming and yelling, jumping and rolling on the floor, calling the roll the holy roll. All this type of nonsense. It takes an incantation to change of the mind of the person who walked into the doors in a sane manner. And as soon as the message and the music started, which is the incantation. The person who walked through the doors in a sane manner, his and her mind changes and become insane. And such insanity is shown through the running around of the assembly and the congregation, the screaming and yelling, the jumping and hollering in an uncontrolled, frantic way, rolling on the floor and calling it holy, the holy roll. That behavior is what the Greek mythology, Circe, is what she is known for. Transhumantation, changing the human being into some other being. And we see this today in churches, in practically all churches today. The English word church, it is not in scripture. What is in scripture is the Greek word Ekklesia. And the New Testament scriptures were written in Hebrew. See, the audience who the apostles were writing to, their audience, they were all Hebrews, all black Jews, original black Jews. But yet these original black Jews, they were in a state of apostasy. Many of them were in a state of apostasy. They were the apostate Jew. They were the remnants, the result of Hellenism. These were the Jews who conformed to Hellenism. But even though they conformed to Hellenism, they still kept and maintained their original language, their original tongue, which is Hebrew. They did not speak the Greek language, replacing their original tongue. They did not do that. They wrote and spoke in their original tongue as they always had done. But that's the audience. Those are the recipients of all the letters of the New Testament. The original black Jews, the apostate black Jews who spoke Hebrew, which means the letters of the New Testament were written in Hebrew. But with the Vatican, with the theft of the Vatican and other interest groups that stole the original handwritten manuscripts in Hebrew, the Vatican, along with other interest groups, they had these letters written, translated into Greek. And that was done with the sole purpose of hiding the original language from the original black Jews, those who went through the transatlantic slave, those who went through that, those who came out of that. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the Vatican, with many various scholars and archaeologists, they changed the Hebrew text of the New Testament letters into Greek, so that the original black Jews who went through the transatlantic slavery, so that they would not know their original tongue, so that they would become familiar and start speaking the American or English language. And the English language is going to be derived from Latin and Greek. Hebrew will not be found anyway. But nonetheless, the recipients of these letters, they were Hebrews, they spoke Hebrews, and the letters were written in Hebrew. This means that Ekklesia is the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew qahal. Qahal, spelled Q-A-H-A-L. And qahal means call out of, the called out ones. Ekklesia conveys the same meaning. Well, where ek, the ek, that means out of, and clall means to call out, the called out ones. and qahal in Hebrew and Ekklesia in Greek, both terms do not mean church. They have no reference to, they have no hint, no alluding to an idea of church. This erroneous interpretation of Ekklesia was done by Constantine in the Council of Nicaea. That's when it was changed. That's when the Greek goddess was placed into the scriptures. It was done then in the First Council of Nicaea. But Ekklesia means call out, the call out ones. And church is from Circe, the Greek goddess of Greek mythology. And this goddess is spoken of in the book of Revelations. Circe is the daughter of Babylon. This is the island of Patmos. This is the island where Yochanan, commonly known as the Apostle John, this is the island where he was banished to. This is the island where the Apostle John, he received the revelation from the Most High, from Yeshua, where Yeshua told John to write these words down, and thus came the book of Revelations. The island of Patmos, this is its true location in Africa, in Namibia, Southwest Africa. The island of Patmos is a Greek province. Patmos was never located outside of Africa in the so-called fraudulent location of Europe. Patmos was always located in Africa and was always the province of Greece. John was located in one of these islands here. One of these islands is the Patmos, island of Patmos. It's either this location or this location. And as we can see, both locations are blurred out, preventing us from seeing what is really there in the island of Patmos. But this is it. This is the location where the Apostle John was banished to. And this is where he wrote the book of Revelations. And in the book of Revelations, in chapter 17, verses 2 to 5, this is where we find Circe. She's mentioned in other sections of Revelations, but particularly here. Circe, the goddess of sorcery, the goddess and daughter of the sun god, and the sun god is Satan. This is Circe. Circe is the church is Circe. And in Revelations chapter 17 verses 2 to 5, it reads, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication, having a golden cup in her hand. And again, this is about Circe. Circe is always depicted with a chalice in her hand, and that chalice is significant. And this is what the book of Revelation is referring to, the chalice that Circe always have. Having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And there's a description of Circe, an accurate description and depiction of the goddess Circe, the goddess of sorcery. One of her main powers was that of transmutation, changing people, particularly men, into beings that are normally not themselves, beings that are outside of themselves, turning them into animals and various cattle. And that is called transmutation. And that is one thing that we see in all churches today. The English word church comes from searche, and this is how she's depicted. One of the significant things that must be known and remembered about this Greek goddess, even though it is of mythology, there's a lot of truth behind this mythology, truth that is shown in churches today. One of it is transmutation. The other truth of searche deals with the structure and the architecture of all churches. You see, the cellist, along with searche herself, that deals with the structure, the architect of churches. All churches are built according to the pagan practice of basilica. Constantine, when he came on the scene, he started constructing the physical building of churches. He started Roman Catholicism and Christianity. And the physical building of a church was all started by Constantine. And Constantine was a pagan, and he borrowed heavily from paganism. One of the things that he borrowed is the concept, the idea of basilica. And that's going to be dealing with the architecture, the format and structure of a building. This is the format, the outline of a basilica that Constantine borrowed from paganism. And all churches are structured in this format. It doesn't matter what the outside structure of the building look like, the inside will always be formatted this way. There will always be a north-as. That's the entrance. After that, there'll be a corridor called the nave. And that nave will lead to this is the womb, what is called the congregation. And after this congregation, there's always a semicircle where the altar is set, where the elders sit, and the instruments of music is stationed in this area. And then on the right and left, the north transept and south transept. That's the basic structure of a basilica. And this is paganism. You see, the pagans, this is structure according to the sex organ of the woman. This is the north-as, the entrance. This is the corridor, the nave. This is the inside the entire womb. This is the sanctuary where the congregation sits. This is the north transept, south transept, and the semicircle. This whole sex organ of the woman is representative of the basilica. And that is how the pagans looked at it. And Constantine borrowed that concept, constructed the church according to that concept. And all churches today are set up, formatted in the same way. This is why we see in the book of Revelations the joining, the union of a building with that of the idea of sex. In Revelation chapter 17, verses 2 to 5, there is the mentioning of sexual behavior in the term fornication. That's a deviant sexual behavior that is joined to a building. The building is the woman. It is Babylon, the country, the nation. Within that nation there are buildings and practices and rituals. And all of that is joined to the deviant practice of sex. And all of this is paganism. That is one aspect of paganism. Paganism always included sexual behavior. And this is Circe. This is Babylon. And again, the church architecture that was started by Constantine, this is supposed to be an image of Constantine, but this is fraudulent. This is a fake image. Constantine was a black man. He was black, a black Greek. He was not Roman. Rome never existed. He was a black Pelagian Greek. And this is not Constantine. Constantine was whitewashed. One of the evidence that we have that shows that Constantine is black is the fact that his mother, Helena, she was a black Greek from this Greek city, Drepana, in Bithynia. And Bithynia is in Asia Minor. All of these are in Namibia, Southwest Africa, and the people there are black. Constantine's mother, Helena, she was a black woman, born a Greek. And he was a black man, born a Greek, not Roman. But Constantine, in the 18th and 19th centuries, he was whitewashed by the Caucasian with the backing of the Vatican. And again, with Circe, this is the depiction of Circe. She always have a chalice in her hand. This is mentioned in Revelations, and this is one of the ways that she is depicted in Greek mythology with a chalice. The other thing is this, that Circe, this goddess, she was not white. She was not depicted as white. All of the Greek gods are shown as black gods, black false gods. So even Circe was whitewashed. The Caucasian got a hold of Greek mythology and whitewashed everything. He got a hold of Greek civilization and whitewashed everything, including the false gods and goddesses. The Circe was always depicted as black. All of the gods of Greece and of other nations were depicted as black, not white. But the chalice, she'd always have a chalice in her hand. And that chalice that Circe has, that is mentioned in the book of Revelations, that chalice is symbolic. It is representative of the church. Circe represents the church, and the chalice represents the church. And both the chalice and Circe represents the sex organ of the woman. You have the narthex, the nave. This is the womb. This is where the congregation sits, and the semicircle with the north transpat and south transpat. This is Circe. This also is the chalice, and the chalice of her fornications. And this is what the Revelation is referring to, that the kings of the earth and the people of the earth took part of and in Circe's fornication. And that means that the people accepted the ideology of Babylon, the political ideology, the religious ideology, and any other form of belief, rituals, and ideology. The people and the kings of the earth accepted it and dwelt in the ideology of Babylon. And so we must keep in mind that whenever we mention church, we are mentioning Circe, because church is Circe, and Circe is church. The word church comes from Circe. The etymology of church is Circe. This is its origin. And Circe is again a false goddess, the daughter god of the sun god, and the sun god is Satan. And the passage in Revelation chapter 17 verses 2 to 5, this passage is also found, and is prior to Revelation, is found in Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 7, where it reads that Babylon has been a golden cup And take note of the chalice that Jeremiah is mentioning. And this is all prophetic. The Most High has given his revelation to Jeremiah, and it is mentioning the chalice. The chalice is symbolic of the church. And so in verse 7 it reads, Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunk. The nations have drunken of her wine, and therefore the nations are mad. That's in Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 7. And as time went on, the Most High, Yahshua, he gave the same revelation that he gave Jeremiah. He gave that revelation to Yochanan, the Apostle John. And so with the church architect, the church, the building, the physical building that was started by Constantine, and Constantine was a pagan. He borrowed heavily from paganism, and he formatted the church on the basis of the basilica, a pagan concept, a pagan architect. Constantine used that and formatted the church in that manner. And from that, all churches today, they construct their building in the same way. The outside of the building may look different, but the inside, the flooring, the foundation, it is always in the format of a basilica. The basilica represents the sex organ of the woman, and that is from paganism. And that is the structure of all churches. And it is no wonder why the Most High command his people to come out of her, come out of Babylon, have no association, no dealing with Babylon. Also, when the Most High says to come out of her, that is the meaning of Ekklesia. The Greek word Ekklesia, come out of her, is also the meaning of the Hebrew word qahal, to come out of. And there's the commandment of the Most High to all his people to come out of Babylon. And keep in mind, the church is Babylon. The church springs from Babylon. And the church in history, when Constantine came on the scene in 325, well, prior to 325 AD, in the 2nd century AD is when Constantine was born. When he came on the scene, everyone is black during this time. He constructed the churches. He became the Greek emperor. He's a Pelagian Greek, the black Pelagian Greek, and he constructed churches. He built the physical building according to paganism. All of this happened in Africa. None of this happened outside of Africa. As time went on, during 711 AD, when the Moors went out of Africa into the lands of beings that are not human, they civilized them. And as time went on, the Caucasian got hold of civilization and got rid of the Moors. And as time went on, during the 18th and 19th centuries, that is when the Caucasian raped, pillaged, and plundered Africa, stole all that is Africa. The Caucasians stole all of it. And one of the things that the Caucasians stole is Greece, along with Circe, along with Constantine. Everything in Africa is black, and everything in Africa was whitewashed. And so the Caucasian moved Greece from Africa and put Greece into his own land. All land outside of Africa is the land of the Caucasian, the land of beings that are not human. The entire land of Africa is black. That is the land of the Most High. That is his land, Africa. And all events of Scripture, Old and New Testament, occurred in Africa. Not one event happened outside of Africa. Only two events happened outside of Africa. And that was the out of Africa happening two ways. And during those two ways, that is when the interbreeding took place. And according to the Caucasians themselves, they did the research and found that the interbreeding took place, the first instance of interbreeding took place in the so-called Middle East, Southwest Asia. And that is outside of Africa. And once more, all lands outside of Africa is the land of fallen angels, the Caucasians' land. Black people land is Africa. The WCC, Oikumini, the World Council of Churches. This is the WCC, the World Council of Churches. It is a branch, an arm, an agency of the Vatican. And this agency, this WCC, it is at work even today with the agenda of bringing back all Protestant churches up under the umbrella, under the control of the Roman Catholic Church. Oikumini, the ecumenical movement. Oikumini is ecumenical. Ecumenical means the inhabited world, or the entire world, or universal. Universal means Catholic. The Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the Vatican. And the Vatican is the Catholic Church. Church is Serche, and Serche is church. In Revelation chapter 13, verses 7 to 8, this is where we get the concept, the idea of a one world religion. And this religion sits on a one world government. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 7 to 8, it reads, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations." And this is the one world government. Power was given to one person, that's the oneness, to rule over all people. That's the one government. And in verse 8 it reads, "And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of the Lamb, in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world." And let's read verse 9 and 10. "If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. But this is where we get the oneness from. The one world religion and one world government in verses 7 and 8. This is where the whole idea of oneness comes from, and it's come from the scriptures in the book of Revelations, chapter 13, verses 7 and 8. And with this oneness, with this one government, there's one religion, one world religion, and that religion is Catholicism. And Catholicism is the Vatican. In Revelation chapter 17, verses 6 to 13, this is where we see the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church. In the book of Revelations, the Catholic Church is mentioned as Circe, as the woman, the harlot of Babylon. In verse 6, it reads, I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. In verse 8, the beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go into its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. And all of this is important. Right now we are giving a geographical location of the beast and the woman. These verses here is dealing with geography and the location where these two entities reside. In verse 10, they are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. In verse 11, the beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7th and is going to his destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. And verse 13, they have one purpose. There's that oneness again. That oneness, that unity, that oneness of a government, and that oneness of a world religion. Oneness of a world government and a oneness of a world religion. They have one purpose and would give their power and authority to the beast. Now Revelation 17, 6 to 13. The beast and the woman. We're told that the beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. It once was, now is not, and it will come again. And we're told that the woman rides the beast. And in verse 9 it says, this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. This is a verse dealing with geography. The geographical location of the beast and the woman. In verse 9 we're told the 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. This lets us know that the woman sits on 7 hills. In Again, we're given the geographical location of the woman and the beast, which is a location that has 7 hills. And with this information, there are only 2 places on earth that has 7 hills that were the site of an empire. And that's important. Not any 7 hills, because there are a lot of locations on earth that has 7 hills in close proximity to each other. Not that, but 7 hills in close proximity to each other that were the site of an empire. And there are only 2 locations like that. And the first location of the 7 hills is in Africa, in Namibia, where the Pelasian Greeks were ruling. They took over the Lydian Empire, and in that Lydian Empire, in that location, the geography shows that there are 7 hills, and on those 7 hills, they were constructed with various buildings and temples of worship. One of the hills was the so-called Capitoline Hill, where the temple of Jupiter was constructed. And Jupiter is another name for Zeus. The second location is a copy of the one in Africa. Again, the second location is a copy of the one in Africa. The second location of 7 hills is in Europe, where the Vatican sits. And this location is a copy of the one in Africa. The 7 hills of the Vatican, they are the Palatine Hill, the Capitoline Hill, the Aventine Hill, the Caelian Hill, the Esquiline Hill, the Quirinal Hill, and the Viminal Hill. All of these hills, these are the 7 hills of the Vatican. And those are the 2 locations where 7 hills are and an empire resided there. The 7 hills in the Vatican, in the Middle East, in Europe rather. This is where the Vatican sits, an empire, a religious empire, and it was an empire. And the one in Africa, that's the Lydian Empire, 7 hills where the Lydian Empire resided. Those are the 2 locations, and these locations are biblical. They fit the Revelation 17, verse 6 through 13. This is the location of the beast, the location where sun worship occurred and is occurring now. In Revelation chapter 17, verse 6 through 13, we were given information, the geographical location of the beast and the woman. And the woman is the Catholic Church. The beast, the 7 hills, or 7 kings, that is the empire that's going to be ruling. And the Vatican, from Vatican Hill, Vatican is on one of the hills that's not mentioned nor included in the 7 hills. You see, the Vatican gets its name from the Vatican Hill. There were more hills. There were about 8 or 9 hills, and this is in Europe. But the 7 hills, it did not include the other 2 hills, and one of the other 2 hills was the Vatican Hill. This is where the Vatican gets its name from. The current Vatican today gets its name from the Vatican Hill that was not included with the 7. And so ancient Babylon, it did not sit on 7 hills, and the geography of ancient Babylon was land full of marshes and land cut up into water channels. And so the 7 hills in Revelations referred only to the 2 locations where empires reside. And again, the first location is the Lydian Empire in Africa, in Namibia. And the second location is a copy of the Lydian Empire, and that one is located in so-called Europe. And that's where the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, that's where it sits at. That's where it resides. It is a copy of the 7 hills of the Lydian Empire when the Pelagian Greeks were ruling it. And so these are the only 2 locations in the world where an empire was built on 7 hills. The Vatican is the woman spoken of in Revelation. In Revelation, the woman sits on 7 hills. The Vatican sits on 7 hills. The woman is Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. The woman is the Vatican. The Vatican is the Roman Catholic Church. And this church, it is doing its best today, in our time, to gather all Protestant churches back under its control. And we must keep in mind that that the church is Circe, and Circe is Babylon, and Babylon is the Vatican. The Vatican is the Roman Catholic Church, Circe. Babylon, the word Babylon is from the Hebrew word Babel. We get our English word Babylon from the Hebrew Babel. And Babel means house of Baal. House of Baal. And within this house, there's the entity, the arm of the Vatican that's being ran by the Jesuits. This entity is the WCC, the World Council of Churches, and it's on an agenda to bring all Protestant churches back under the control of the Roman Catholic Church. And with the WCC, they are global. They are in all countries. In all countries, working their ecumenical movement. And the ecumenical movement, they are doing it. One of the avenues where they are doing and spreading ecumenism is through dialogues, through setting up different workshops, through dialogues. That they're working through different forms of dialogues where the WCC sets up operations in various locations across the globe, and they're trying to bring, and they do invite all Protestant churches to attend these dialogues, to apply and become a member of the ecumenical movement. The WCC, the World Council of Churches, it has many churches under its umbrella. The WCC, they are global in all countries, in their regions of operations. The regions are Africa, Asia, Caribbean, Latin America, Middle East, North America, the Pacific, and there are more, a lot more regions. Within the WCC, there's the Federal Council of Churches and the National Council of Churches. Both of these entities, the Federal Council of Churches and the National Council of Churches, both of these entities work together with the WCC in gathering all Protestant churches together in unity and oneness, back up under the control of the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican. And a few churches that are listed is the instituted churches, the Anglican churches, the Disciples of Christ, Church of Christ, evangelical churches, Friends, which is the Quakers, holiness churches, Lutheran churches. And mentioning these churches, these are references to the entire body of churches. For example, the holiness churches. This phrase, the holiness churches, that refers to the entire conglomerate and branches and offshoots of the holiness churches. Up under this phrase, the holiness churches, there are many other holiness churches that may have different names. All of them are included, as well as the Lutheran churches. This is not referring to just one church. This is referring to all Lutheran churches that have different names. The Mennonite churches. This is referring to all various Mennonite churches, as well as the Methodists. You have the Salvation Army, Seventh-day Adventists, United and Uniting churches, Reformed churches, Pentecostal churches. This is referring to all Pentecostal churches, not just one church that's in Pentecostal, but all Pentecostal churches, no matter what the name is. If it's a Pentecostal church, it is a member of the WCC. And there are many, many more churches that has joined themselves to the ecumenical movement. Many more churches that have joined themselves to the Vatican. One of the main churches that's a part of the WCC and a helping founder of the WCC is the Church of England, headed by Queen Elizabeth. Under the WCC, there's the Council for National Policy, the Heritage Foundation. There are many, many more churches that are not listed that have become members of the WCC, World Council of Churches. And this World Council, it is active, it is at work today with the agenda of oneness, of unity, of bringing all Protestant churches together as one, back under the control of the Roman Catholic Church. That is the WCC. And the significance of all this is that we are living in the time, the last days, and we are seeing right in front of us with our own eyes the constructing, the building of the one world religion along with the one world government. The one world religion headed and led by the Vatican, where the Pope resides. And there are 3 popes. There's the one, the Pope that wears the white gown. There's the Pope that wears the black gown, called the Black Pope. And the third one is the Pope that wears gray, called the Gray Pope. These 3 popes the one that is put out in the media, that the public sees through the media. He wears the white gown. He is the one that is known through all nations. The other two, they are behind the scene, and that's where the power is wielded. Behind the scenes, the white pope is more of a puppet. The black pope, he is the one that wields power, and he is the one that is behind the scenes, along with the gray pope. The gray pope is the one that has more power than the black pope. The black pope is in charge of the Jesuit society. The gray pope runs the entire thing, and it again has more power than the black pope. But the pope that wears the white gown, that is the one that the public sees. That is the one that is in the media, that goes to different lands and countries, goes around shaking people's hands. That's the pope that is merely a puppet. That's the one that's been shot at several times. The black pope you do not see in the media. The gray pope you do not see in the media. That's where the power lies, with the black pope and gray pope. And out of the two, the gray pope has more power. And this is the Vatican, the seat of Satan, the sun god, whose daughter is Circe. Circe is the church. The church is Circe, and the church is the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church.